Is that better? I don't know why I'm asking you this.
Oh, that's nice. It should be working. I'm not offline. I'm online. Here we go. I'm live, baby. Yeah. It's 5 p.m. I'm online. Yes. We are working. We are streaming. It's great. I love it. Welcome, everyone, to Nite Jewelia and Julia Holter hour. We are going to be, Julia, how are you today?
I'm good.
It's a little hot, huh?
I'm hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're hot too.
I have AC, so
yeah.
I'm doing well. But enough about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about songwriting. I invited you here today because I just think you're one of my favorite songwriters, and that's not just because you're one of my best friends.
Likewise.
But
actually,
no
surprise. Likewise.
Yeah.
I don't know if you. Sorry.
I wanted to talk about an email that you sent me in 2011 with a song attached to the email entitled Marion Bod. You sent me the song, and this was before it was released on Revenge, and you asked me what I thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, holy shit, this is like insane. I've never heard anything like this before, is what I thought. And I thought to myself, like, I think I might have said something to you like, this is you. Like, I think you've done it, is what I thought. Like, you communicated your vision to me. Because before I had seen you play a bunch and I'd heard recordings here and there, but this was like this vision, this song. And I want to talk about it, but I want to first talk about like how you got creatively, how you got from composition, sort of music school, and before as an undergraduate, into writing songs, and how that came to this point of writing a song like Marion Bod. And if you could discuss your creative path that you went on to try to discover that.
Yeah. I think like a lot of people are always wondering stuff like that, especially like younger people who are in school, and like my experience in school was like, I feel like I had some great teachers, and like really there were always talented students around me. And I always, like, I still have nightmares about school because I just felt like such a loser all the time. I mean, I went to music schools like starting in high school, and there just always were these really like talented people, you know, jazz, like incredible jazz pianists, or there was a concerto night at my high school where like people were playing these crazy concertos, and I just was like not a virtuoso at all. I'm not a virtuoso. And I knew that, but I like loved music. So I guess basically, I kind of, one thing that happened for me, I think I'm more of a sort of introverted type of person in a school atmosphere. So I was always like very quiet and like pretty insecure and not sure like when to voice whatever I was thinking, and that kind of continued. That's kind of always been how I've been in school until like I started recording. And like some friends of mine, like Jib Kidder and my friend Jeffrey, who was in Martes in Michigan when I was in college, I was studying like composition, which is more like, you know, like writing music for other people to play and like notating it. And I really struggled with that as a as the main form because I didn't like know how to exactly how to transcribe what I would feel, hear, whatever into like notation directly without. I never improvised much or anything. Anyway, when I heard my friends were recording, and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So I started recording, and I didn't sing at the time either. I wasn't a singer. I mean, I. So what happened with recording, and this is what I really think is so cool, and now a lot of people record because it's like easier and easier every year with computers or whatever. But I just that really opened me up to like being able to do whatever I wanted and not have anyone hear it first. You know, I really got into just babble of the voice, like the voice. I started singing, um, and that was kind of like a huge breakthrough for me because I had never let myself have fun, and that was a huge turning point. And I mean, it was literally that I just downloaded Audacity and like had a 1/8 inch cable that I connected to my digital piano at the time, and recorded and used the internal mic for the vocal, and it was like a huge like breakthrough. And that really just like continues till today, that I feel like my progression toward whatever I'm doing now. I mean, I just feel like the same person totally, like always trying things out with recording and never really knowing what I'm doing completely.
It's interesting, like the babble thing that you just said,
Yeah.
because I relate to that so much.
Yeah.
The initial
Right.
sort
Of
of
course.
like nonsense that you are spewing out of yourself. And I think that sometimes with composition, it's so about transforming our thoughts into a logical, linguistic, or symbolic structure
Right.
that sometimes that doesn't work for people. And it's not because they're not talented. It's simply that it's just one level of thinking, you know?
Totally.
And there's other levels of thinking that aren't as systematic but can create like insane works of art.
Definitely. And in like yeah, because in classical conservatory land, there's always like this kind of, I don't know. I think people look at notation as like this tells you everything, but obviously it doesn't ever really. Like it's so much about you don't, you know, it's a form of information, but it's not the whole information.
Yes.
And it's this weird kind of unspoken assumption when you're mastering the art of notation. And it's like that I never did. I still kind of suck at it. I mean, I use it all the time, but I suck at it because anyway, I always feel like I'm learning more about communicating ideas. So
I think someone asked about notation in one of the questions, but we'll get to that later. So I just want to play a little bit of Marienbad for
Okay.
our audience. And I am pro notation. Okay. Sorry, someone in the chat. We are not pro or not pro
Oh yeah.
notation. I mean, Julia uses notation. And actually, I also use a form of notation, not Western notation. I guess it's kind of Western. It might be some sort of jazz notation that I use. But we're not
Yeah.
against symbols.
No,
people.
like totally. I'm always like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's the same. It's like sometimes it's chords. I write
Yeah.
chords. This is another dream from Avery. I didn't take this out on purpose. It's sitting here.
We should talk about how notation changes the type of song. Like, for instance, if you were to write out a lyric on a piece of paper, a catchphrase or
Right.
some sort of thing that you thought about, versus if you were to write out a melody that you thought of or a chord progression just off the top of your head, how that initial step of visualizing your song will influence the composition.
Totally.
Yeah, or an instrument you choose or whatever. And like I remember with Silhouette learning that song of yours, feeling like it was very chordal.
Yeah.
And so I guess thinking about that with when I play Marion Budd, maybe in the back of your mind you could think about like what were the initial steps that made this song possible? Like what kind of songwriting steps while I play it for everybody.
Cool. Okay.
I'm going to play it really quick.
I can hear a statue, wonder why they're so still. All label heels in a garden. Summer's water roadside runs me beside them. Could it be that's by them? Thought to be too thin, to be too bold, or start too young and growing. Ten signs that read silence. Ten signs that read silence.
Sorry for the abrupt ending there. And yeah, it's just, wow, this song is insane. It still gives me chills.
Oh,
Ah. um, God, I love it. So,
thank you so much.
what?
Thanks for guiding me early on with it too.
Yeah, okay. So, like, wow. Can you talk about the song a little bit?
Yeah, I think that it's like that thing I was saying where I still feel like completely the same person I've always been, in that I think what I was trying to do in that song is something I'm still kind of trying to do. I was like really, I guess I was listening to like madrigals or something. I was like into voices and I wanted to have lots of voices flying around, which is also something I wanted to do in aviary. But yeah, I just wanted to, I don't know, I wanted to really play with lots of vocals coming out of all from all over, and so, and then I was, and sort of that, it was that kind of combined with playing on a Rhodes and just finding that chord at the beginning. I mean, the series of chords at the beginning. I think that really was the first seed of that song, was that intro.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kept building the song. Took a long time. There's all these parts, which is kind of how a lot of my songs are, but that
Just
one was, yeah.
for our listeners, can you give them, oh, can you give them, one second. Can you give them some perspective of how long a song like that might take you?
Yeah, that one, I can't remember if I was working in Audacity still at some point. I think you came over to my place in like 2010 and told me about Logic. Or maybe I went over to your place and I got this, like, found this version, like, bootleg copy of Logic. Anyway, so I started working in Logic, I think around that time, and I was like, I don't know, I was kind of like excited by all the options of having like an easier audio, like what is it, DAW
Mm-hmm.
audio software.
Workstation.
So I think I just was like exploring a lot of things, like learning how to all the possibilities of like effects and stuff. And so that was like a learning period for me. So, okay, long answer to your question. I think it probably took like 9 months to work on that song. And I had a lot of frustration with it. I was like angry about it and like going through all these like, it was very important for me.
How many tracks
But it was
do you
hard.
think how many tracks do you think was comprised that song?
Probably like 100 and something. Over 112 or something. And then Cole MGN was working on mixing it ultimately.
Right, that's when you
That
came
was
to
where I
Topanga.
learned about, oh, right, maybe I shouldn't
Right.
have 150 tracks. Actually, I still didn't learn. I still do that.
You still
honestly.
do that because I remember Cole talking about Aviary and saying that you had maxed out Pro Tools or something. Yeah. So right, and so you took 9 months to create this song, and you said that you were feeling all these emotions about it. Did that have to do with getting to a new section and just not being sure about how it fit, or not being sure what to add? Like, where were these frustrations coming in exactly?
Yeah, like not knowing how to, there's these different parts and not knowing how to blend them, or like not knowing where to go with a certain section. I was really struggling with the form of it. And I mean, I was, yeah, I just was I don't know. I was feeling insecure and frustrated and a mix of that and like joy and uh
And when
yeah.
you sent it to me, were you feeling like still a little bit worried about it? Like, how do you get to the next phase of feeling like, you know what, I think this is coming together? At what stage did that happen for you in this song?
I don't know if I remember. I think it was probably many different points, but I think what happens, and one of the reasons I've shared, like a lot of the times that I've shared music with you, um, would be times where I know that I'm at a place where I know the song should be something. Like I haven't given up on it, but I start to work on it so much. Like I was working on it so much. I probably had all these different files, project files of different versions, and you want to hear someone who knows your work and who you trust like taste wise, and to have a hear it their fresh perspective, because you don't always know, like no matter how much, like it's still true for me, no matter how much I've made music or whatever, I still like lose perspective a lot. And it's great to have these trustworthy musician friends that you can like say, I don't know, like,
I mean, I
does
totally
that answer
agree.
your question? I don't know.
Yeah, and I send you stuff all the time. And I guess like we stay insecure throughout the process. And
Which is
maybe,
healthy, I
yeah,
think.
you shouldn't be like, oh yeah, this,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like, that's a little scary. I mean, it's good to be proud of your work at
Yeah.
times, for sure. But yeah, overconfidence is definitely a sign of something maybe underdeveloped at times.
Right.
So this is just such an incredible song, and it's interesting that you talk about struggling with the form, right? Because the form is so intoxicating, it just never stops progressing
Mm.
until it ends, and then you're just like, what happened? You know,
Eh.
it's the form is incredible, and you do experiment a lot with form in your music, and you released this album Ecstasies in 2012, and then you went on to do Loud City's Song in 2013. Can you talk about a little bit about how, if it did, but was the process very different in creating the songs for Loud City Song as opposed to Ecstasies, or how did it change?
Yeah. So, um, both like a lot of my earlier recordings, Ecstasies and before, were like I was mixing. Ultimately, Cole mixed Ecstasies, but before that, I did my own mixes or whatever. And Tragedy, I did mixes, and so well, first of all, with Loud City Song and on, in terms of records, actually, I was I know that what I just said made no sense. That was like a lot of different sentences that were like patched together. But basically, from Loud City Song on, I was recording in a studio for a portion of the recordings. So that was the biggest difference. The mixing was also a big difference. I mean, basically, like it's always so hard for me to get into the when you get into the discussion of like demo versus final recording. Um, Sometimes I couldn't remember. We were talking earlier. I couldn't remember if like a certain thing was from the demo and the final recording or not. Like a lot of these things are like combined in my mind
Mm.
for certain songs. So, but with Loud City Song, it was the first time I'd been in a studio, recorded in the studio, and I had worked with other musicians, but just having them come over, like on Ecstasies or Tragedy, and perform something for the record, but not like with a good, like just with like a stage microphone and
Mm-hmm.
everything. So Loud City Song was the first time that I kind of like went into the studio, and Cole MGN was doing the production with me and mixing. And I just sort of like having these other musicians were there, and like it just was like I never did any like rehearsals with musicians until Aviary, but still just getting to work in a studio, which I had had experience like being in other people's project, like seeing what being in a studio was like, and I really wanted to do that, so it was really exciting. But definitely the process of like how a song kind of transforms is in probably in every record there's been more than I expected amount of time between the recording in the studio process with the musicians and then the ultimate mixing. I always then take these recordings from the studio, bring them into my realm and work on them before then handing it off to Cole also to work on the mixing and stuff. So I think like I don't know if that answers
you bring
the question.
you bring the recordings back into your home studio after you record in the professional recording environment.
Right.
It's interesting to me that you got like you transitioned to the Loud City Song environment, and you did it because I was there the whole time watching.
Yeah.
After going from home recording to that space, like you did like a seamless transition. Like you did such an amazing job at taking your songs and putting them into a studio environment and having them professionally recorded and keeping your vision alive while having like almost a completely different context of recording. And that's pretty amazing, in my opinion. Like just going from home recorded to studio environment like that. How did you manage to keep your vision alive when you changed the environment so drastically?
I mean, I don't know. I guess there is probably a big difference, you know, in my recordings, but I think I just really spend a lot of time making sure all the layers in the final version are like doing the blending that I want to hear. And I mean, it was a big deal for me too, actually, because I hadn't really worked with musicians for so many years, and I never really had worked with musicians in a way that I felt like I did a good job at working with musicians. So for me, it was very scary, but and I didn't feel like it was a smooth, like I felt very insecure about it. And when we first got the recordings back, I was like freaked out. I was like, what am I gonna do with this? I'd never heard like dry instrumental, like instruments. And also I was recording the vocals. I think I was recording vocals somewhat at home and also in Cole's studio, I guess. But I don't remember actually even, I never recorded vocals in the studio. So much of the vocal stuff too, I do at home and like the keyboard stuff. So I kind of just put all this stuff all over it. And then it kind of turns into this blend of, and I think that's the strongest, the most good, the best version of that is Aviary, because so much of Aviary I also recorded at home, and I kind of found a balance for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I want to play a song from Aviary, but talk a little bit more about like your journey there. So basically, like you went Loud City Song, you were just like thrown into the mix with this whole crazy process of recording instruments and then getting the dry stems and then being like, okay, how do I turn this into Julia Holter from like Julia Holter but in a studio, you know? And it also requires having a vision, right? Which is like, I'm going to write these songs for these instruments and I'm just going to have the faith that when I bring it back to my house, I can turn it into what I want to hear.
Right.
And that says something to me about the fact that maybe you did learn something from composition school that was useful, which is just putting thought into action. Do you know what I mean? Not necessarily like, not necessarily notation or anything like that, but being able to direct people.
Yeah.
You know?
Which I still struggle with. Like, I'm not good at that. I often am indecisive, and but yeah, I mean, definitely. And when I got I mean, there was a lot of like confusion about how I was going to make it work. And I was so insecure in Loud City Song working with people, but yeah.
And then with Have You in My Wilderness, um, you felt more confident at that stage when you started the process, or it was just you were equally like, ah, how did that
I
record
think I'm
feel?
always like, actually, it still feels new to me, honestly. Like going in a studio still feels like, oh my God, like how is this possible that I get to be here? Like it still feels like that.
Um,
Um,
okay, I'm gonna talk about Aviary for a second and play that song, a song from Aviary that I also got an email of a demo of it, and I want to just like preface it by like talking about how you were able to sort of create the vision for this. Like basically, I don't want to like, I know you've talked about this in interviews before, but drawing inspiration sometimes, especially like for instance right now, in a time when it's like hard to feel inspired because we're in this kind of crazy situation
yeah,
globally. But I think that you also were having those kinds of feelings when you were writing Aviary in terms of just what was going on in the world and feeling kind of oppressed by it in some ways, at least psychologically. And
yeah,
um, I remember you talking about how you wanted to turn that or communicate that through your music somehow.
right.
Um, and how are you able to, in effect, translate an experience that's going on around you? Or how did you do that with Aviary? How did you manage to? What were the channels that you took to make that possible?
I think a lot of that's the stuff of, bringing out what you're feeling, um, in creative work. Like at least for me, it just comes out kind of like innate, like naturally, kind of. So, I mean, I also think that most of I like to make music with lots of layers and messily, like to do so messily. Um, and so maybe that was the perfect storm for something like really overblown with lots of layers.
Do
But yeah,
you mean
yeah.
layers of meaning or do you mean layers of sound also? Or both?
Oh, layers of sound. I actually mean it very like literally, like
Yeah.
layers of sound. I mean, but yeah, you're right. I mean, meaning, well, that's a whole other thing for me. I guess just because of my struggles with dealing with meaning and writing lyrics and all that stuff. But definitely what I mean here, especially is sonically, just like layers. And I always love lots of layers because I love the interactions between that you get between things that you don't expect or that turn into artifacts like that that become part of the whole thing. Like all that, the mystery of sound is just so cool. Anyway,
I guess I was thinking what you just said just then was kind of what I was referring to was your struggles with meaning. Like just
right.
to pin that really quick, because like I guess what I mean with Aviary is that to me it had a very strong concept, um, even though the concept isn't like direct. It's not like this is a record about X, but you had this strong concept and you were able to communicate some state of affairs that you noticed into this record. And I'm wondering, just for people out there who are songwriting right now
Yeah.
and are trying to figure out how to communicate their a situation that they find themselves in, where whether it be like it doesn't have to be personal necessarily, but how did you manage to do that with Aviary? What were the things that you looked to? Was it like books or people or situations or?
I think like I didn't know what I was feeling, and I did. Is that I didn't like come to Aviary with like I know what I'm gonna make or whatever. I do surround myself with lots of books, Um, I do listen to lots of music, watch movies. I think with Aviary, I started doing stream of consciousness writing, like in a notebook, like words, which I don't do very much. But I will be honest, like I feel like every time, right now I'm dealing with this. Like I've been trying to start writing, and it's like, I mean, I've been writing, but not really my own, like for my own recording project. And I think it's still a thing for me. It's hard, but yeah, like a lot of, I really do a lot of recording, just tons of recording of improvising. And I will maybe start working with words. In terms of how to get at what I'm feeling, I think that emerges for me. It's always like an emergence that I'm not even always aware of. But then you start to see it, and then you can work off of it, I guess.
I like that. I love that.
And I think just not thinking too much about it is important for me personally. I think for some people it's better to think more about it, but I struggle with that.
I love that idea that you allow things to emerge in a sonic manner, and then you notice patterns or notice things. I love that. That's so cool. So I want to play, and just for the people in the chat, I realize that you're asking things. We're gonna do a Q&A at the end. We have a bunch of questions that people submitted, but I'll look at your stuff and see if I can somehow shoehorn it in. Anyways, I just wanted to let them know. But yeah. So just getting to another song that you had sent to me for my like ears or whatever, it was originally called I Can't Turn Away, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. And I remember I had given you this drum machine, this early Acetone drum machine that's like just, basic patterns. And
should I get it? Or that's
oh, yeah. Can you get it? You're frozen. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, well, let's see. What are people asking in the chat? Some people are requesting outside. I really appreciate your songs have unconventional. It ends up really being blah, blah, blah. Okay, someone has asked something like that.
It's not on right now. So
there's the drum machine. There's the drum machine. Yay. So I got this when I was 22 or something. The start-stop button is missing, but it just has really basic patterns. But I remember I was like, Julia, you should just take this because you maybe can do something with this. Like I haven't really messed with it in a long time. And what's cool is like, I guess you used it. Like yeah. I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, like you sent me the song and I was like, Jesus, she actually used the drum machine. That's so cool that you managed to get it in there because I wasn't able to fit it into my music and I thought that was so cool. Did you use it on I Shall Love too also?
Yeah. I think, yeah.
So dope. I don't know the year that was made, but okay, cool. I don't know if I can save this video, but I'll try to figure it out at the end. Okay, so just chill for a sec. Anyways, so you sent me this track, and it starts out with this drum machine sound. I'm like, oh my gosh, she used the instrument. That's so cool. And I remember just thinking again, like, this song is like so progressive. I never know where it's gonna go. Like, and it's so exciting. And I just felt like there were so many climactic moments. And it really like took me on a journey, and I was so impressed once again. So I'm just gonna play it for our people, really quick. So I'll be right back, Julia.
I forgot it started with the drum machine.
Yeah.
The demo.
Okay,
yeah.
Here we go.
You're like the shorter episode. If you remember the order of the letters, 'cause I'm far away. unknown tsunami, the tender sound. Blue is it that I hope you'll say? How do I know what I think until I say it? Aaron's nameless treasure. I'll be on my way again. What makes you think you can wait till 9? Can't you play along? Know the bubonic in the eyes. I can't turn away. The old game, you have to follow the rules. The clock is ticking, there's no other spill to run to. Morning and turning something. Blue. I can't hope for it today. I wonder though if my heart tells me everything I need. I see, I know, I yes, I you, I ace, I hide, I say, I look, I run, I fall, I can, I trip, I fool, I fall, I bend, I do, I do, I can, but I fool, I grow, I should, I mind, I rule, I say, so I step, I do, I nice, I hate, I show, I fun, I talk, I back, I do, I say, I do, I back, I say, I do, I can, I run, I good, I don't, I white, I turn, I fight, I go, I lose, you know, you see, you yes, you ace, you say, you high, you low, you to the ball, you can't do, go back, you do, you know, you do, go on, you shut your body, you see those. Am I so bad I have to wait so long? Like a good evening, I lie mutant underwater, but I come up for air. Where does the meaning mean freedom? When you're at work, there's a consequence. You finally saying wasn't what I really needed, but I know today I feel the life in the glowing light. What for the light and I spoke with shame. All these flaws healed, sold and nourished in the dark. I can't turn away. I'm stunned by what I wasn't saying through. Give me a mountain with the snow that I can run through. Be a good listener though.
Wow.
I always think of you when like a good evening, and I was like, good evening, like night, good evening. And then
Aw.
there's a line, it's like, a lot of this is all stream of consciousness writing that became like these lyrics, but know the bubonic and the ice, and I think of Geneva,
Oh, all your
and
friends are in the
bubonic plague.
song. Geneva and Ramona are there, keeping you company. So, in talking about this song, I kind of wanted to like get in some of the questions that people ask,
Yeah,
because I think that they're relevant to this song.
cool.
And actually, the first questions are, so this series that I'm doing right now is sponsored by the college at which I teach in Los Angeles, called Occidental College. And so I'm a songwriting teacher there. That's the reason we're having this talk, everybody. And they sponsored this talk with a grant called Remsen Bird. And so one of the questions was sent by a student beforehand who was in my course last year, Will Black, and is like a huge fan of you. And he was so excited that you were able to do this, and he asked some really interesting questions. And he is asking about instrumentation, which is because we were talking about the drum machine, and also just Avery has insane, lush instrumentation. And he says it's one of his favorite things about your music is your lush and varied instrumentation. And he asks, how do you go about selecting the instruments for your songs? And how do you find musicians to perform on these instruments? Is it ever hard to find performers? So that's one question that he asked. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, totally. I guess it's not been hard. I've been really lucky that to work with these really great musicians the whole time I've worked with musicians, even going back to Tragedy. I think in LA there are lots of really creative people and talented people that are making music, and I think probably what a lot of them share is that they all write their own music, so they're creative kind of. All musicians are creative, but a lot of them write their own music and have their own kind of creative world. And so that's maybe I don't know. I think I do when I'm working on a song, like on a demo, I do tend to have like an idea of an instrument in some cases, or I'll know someone who'll be like, oh, this is the right personality / instrument. But I am thinking about the instruments a lot, and I've just been really lucky to that I'll be like, I just really wanted for when I was working on Aviary, I was really hearing like trumpet. I never worked with a trumpet player before, but I was like, I really would love, there was like just a trumpet player that just played weird stuff and like did crazy stuff. And then like Sarah Bell Reed showed up through a friend of mine recommended Sarah Bell Reed, so I think, a lot of that was through CalArts. There's a lot of CalArts people, but they don't all go to CalArts. And Devin Hoff, who wrote the bass line on Le Jeu to You that we just listened to.
Oh, I didn't realize he wrote that bass line.
Yeah, he wrote that part. Because that kind of came in later, because I was like, what am I doing in the studio? That song was a mess at the beginning. It was like totally sounds so weird. It was one of those examples where you come up with an idea in a demo and then like you bring it to the studio and it's like so weird and like bad. So I redid the whole beginning and took out all of the stuff that was there, and then sent it to Devin, and Devin recorded in New York.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
So anyway, Devin's not at not everyone's at CalArts, but definitely there's been a lot of great creative musicians that I've met that way. So I guess I'm lucky, that I've been in a city where there's a lot of great musicians. I think that exists in a lot of places. I always think it's so much about like just the vibe of the person too, and like their like um, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard. It is hard to find people, but well, I don't know. Somehow I've been lucky, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're in a community of amazing musicians also, you know, like just from CalArts, but also from other, you know, in other ways. Like, I mean, just our group of friends,
Yeah,
there's a lot of amazing
exactly.
musicians. I think we just like kind of gravitate towards each other in a way.
Totally.
But that's really interesting that you think of certain personalities from time to time when you're imagining an
Yeah.
instrument. I love that. Oh, dogs.
Yep.
So
Frances.
I'm gonna talk about some other questions too that people asked, and this is relevant to, I think, you know, being in quarantine, and I know I'm having difficulty getting started on writing songs and writing music. And Charles Beecham asked, when you run into a lack of motivation / inspiration, how do you overcome this? And then H.A. Fitzgerald kind of asked a similar question, which is, what do you do when you're not surrounded by people who share similar creative interests? So that's like really interesting. But I guess the point is like, what do you do when you're just like stuck in a mode of not feeling motivated? How do you manage to get out of it?
Right. I don't know. I'm in it right now. I've been trying to work on stuff, and I think a lot, honestly, it's like so much about perspective and just like, and just like sometimes you just can't write something because like right now I feel that too. I feel really weird because I actually am domestic right now. Like I'm so lucky that I wasn't supposed to be on a tour, and I didn't have all my plans change. So I'm like, oh, I should just write. I should be writing. And it's hard because the vibe is weird right now. And so I understand. And I think that honestly, the best thing is just not to think too much about it, not to judge, and just record a lot. Record yourself doing stuff all the time. I mean, that's how I do it, but you could also note if you notate, and that's the main way that you think of things. Do like, I haven't done this yet, but like stream of consciousness, if you write lyrics, if you use words, that, you know, stream of consciousness words. With Legit You, I didn't really like know what the song should be about. It was more an expression of playing with words, and that's like the games to you, I guess it technically means, but my dogs have arrived.
Yay.
Like, I guess it means, that's sort of like what it is. It's like playing with words, and that's like just sort of.
Hi, Francis.
That's sort of like, you have to keep playing. And if you're like thinking and you're negative, which I get negative too, you just have to stop and do something else.
Yeah.
Like do something technical. I've been like working on my Spanish.
Yeah. We still have
which
to
is really great.
We have to converse in Spanish. Not right now.
Yeah.
But
We'll just switch this all to Espanol right now.
Yeah. Is there a button for that on Zoom? Can we just yeah, finding motivation is hard. I thought this was a funny question on the chat, which I think it's just a funny question, and not because I think it's bad. I just think this is like the question was, how do you find sincerity? And
yeah.
It's interesting because, I mean, just from my personal opinion, I really don't think you can find that. I think that it emerges, like you're saying, Julia. Like,
yeah,
you record and record and record, and you work and you work and you work, and sometimes it comes off insincere or soulless. And that's okay.
Yes,
it's not your fault. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a bad time that you recorded that day, and you have to just come back the next day. I mean,
yes.
Don't you think? You've recorded
Totally.
some soul. I'm sure you've recorded some stuff without soul that you weren't proud of and you've discarded.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
It happens, right?
Overthinking it, and overthinking it's different than working on it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
like both Le Jeu to You and Marion Bot, it's really cool you use those as examples because they were both things I struggled with and worked on for a long time, and they have all these different parts. And I think that is, it's so much about like, just there's probably so many bad versions of Marion Bad that there's so many insincere versions of Marion Bad. Probably the version of Le Jeu to You that was in the studio was like bad. Like the beginning of it was okay. Bad is a really negative maybe because I don't want to make people get into this negative zone, but like it's not sincere. Maybe it was like, what is this style? Or I don't know, think about style as much, but what is this that we're trying to do here? Like, I don't know. It just didn't make sense. So I don't think its sincerity necessarily makes sense, but I do think like it doesn't always make sense in your mind, but you'll feel it. Like you'll feel when something feels right.
Oh my God, that brings me back a really happy memory, actually. Not necessarily happy, but like a thing that stuck with me that you said during Loud City's song, which was, I remember because Colm Gian and I were in the car listening to the record, to Loud City's song, and it was the mix. Wait, no. Was it Wilderness? One of them. And it was the mix before you mixed it again.
Oh, okay,
and it was a mix, and we were listening, and you called or texted, or maybe we talked about it later, and you were like, I just didn't get that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
I was in the car, and I didn't get the feeling that I trust, that tells me that something is right, and we need to remix it. And it's like, people, this is not a decision that Julia took lightly. Like, to remix this record required a lot more manpower and funds and everything and time, but you relied on that feeling inside of you to tell you, we need to do this, we need to work on this more.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, even when we were done, I had a freak out moment. We had already done it twice, and then I was like, oh no, we have to remix again. But it was a freak out, like, it wasn't true. So I think like the problem, the struggle is like, understandably, like I get it. It's really hard to always know exactly what you want. And it's like you're saying, I didn't get the feeling, but maybe I for a moment didn't get the feeling finally at the end after doing it twice, but that was momentary. And I think it's so I get it, how hard it is to know. First of all, you're like, right now I'm in the midst of early writing stages, and it's so confusing. Like, I don't know what I want, and it never stops being confusing. And I just think that's like necessarily like has to be part of the whole process.
I want to get back to the stream of consciousness writing. Somebody asked something interesting about that, and it relates to what you said about what someone asked on Instagram about lyrics. And the person on Instagram says, if some lyrics are intended to have personal interpretations, but what if I don't know the meaning? For instance, what if I have no idea what the lyrics are supposed to mean to me? And that gets into stream of consciousness writing. Somebody on the chat asks, how do you tweak and edit these words afterwards? What do you do with them? Can you talk a little bit about lyrical meaning and how that relates to your music?
Yeah. So like a lot of things that do come out stream of consciousness, I edit a lot. So for me, it's so much a mix. Like in my music in general, it's like it's a really imbalance between like stream of consciousness, like tons of stuff, mixing with tons of editing, and like really trying a lot of different things. Not necessarily like trying to not overthink it, but letting myself try all the options. Or not all the options, but as many options as I want, or whatever are possible, you know, technically, or so yeah, like I think with lyrics, wait, can you just repeat
the question? If sorry. And this is from xzipkiss on Instagram, if some lyrics are intended to have personal interpretations, what if I don't know the meaning? For instance, what if I have no idea what the lyrics are supposed to mean to me?
So for me, that's great. I mean, I have no like intentions for. I mean, I don't want to have intentions for listeners. I think sometimes there are things I would like people to like to hear it like as nicely as possible, like maybe not just on a cell phone from like far away, or like, okay, we have these types of intentions for listeners, but I think in general, it's like about not expecting people to know why certain words are there, or like what a word even is. Like when I think about how I listen to music and the songs I love, I think most of the time I don't know all the lyrics to the songs. And that might just be how I am, but I kind of am a little like, I'm a like singing along to my favorite song can be kind of like, I'm a Simon, like I don't know. Like I actually don't know a lot of times what the words are. And I just think that's part of like, but you could sit down. It's not you shouldn't know what they are either. It's like you could sit down and look at the lyrics, and then that's like another experience. And I just, so I, or say you want to know what the words are, but you still don't understand, and you're looking at the lyrics. I think that's okay too. I mean, obviously, but I think it's also like, for me, the fun of a lot of my favorite music is not always knowing like why certain words are there, and I feel like that's true in the poppiest I think that's true in like the poppiest music too. Like sometimes the lyrics can be so weird.
Agreed. Or that the lyrics should be poetic enough to offer multiple interpretations, right?
Right.
Like that you could put yourself in the song and it could be about anything or about anyone.
Right.
And I actually love when people misunderstand what my songs are about. I think it's like one of my favorite things because it means that they put themselves in it. They like immerse themselves so much in it that they made it about something completely outside of what I had originally intended. So I think it's, pop songs even pop songs that maybe like I've written, like I don't want to say it's about this. It has to be about this. And you must see it that way. It should be open,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me what you're saying.
Cool.
I kind of want to try to do some more stream of consciousness writing now that you mention it. That might be a good thing to do in quarantine.
Yeah.
I think that's right. I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was one of the questions, was about flow state creativity. Should we read this really long question? That's really interesting.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll let you decide how to do all these questions.
I love this question. So somebody said that this Twitch chat they're not used to Twitch chat being wholesome. Because I guess people are just maybe trolling on Twitch, but our chat is like really nice, cool people interested in songwriting and art. It's like, yeah. Cool. Oh, somebody asked about the concept of punchlines, catchphrases. Okay, well, it's funny that I think that catchphrases can be really important, but they don't really need to like have an exact meaning. Like, for instance, 1 second of love could mean a bunch of different things, and I thought of those words together, but I didn't and I knew they meant something, but not necessarily, and I kind of attached it afterwards. And for you, Julia, songs like Le Jeu to You, or I'm thinking Horn Surrounding Me might be a good one. Like that has that phrase, Horn Surrounding Me, and the way that it is in the song has such an incredible quality, because for me at least, that punchline or catchphrase or whatever it is, that climactic lyrical moment in the song, it's like literal and figurative at the same time. I always interpreted it like about instruments, but then I also interpreted it as, and this is my personal interpretation, of like being at like one of those parties that we were at like in the early 2000s, like in LA, and just people being like loud and obnoxious and like talking about nothing till like 5 a.m. So that I've never asked you about this. I don't even know if this is true, but this is like my perspective. And that just goes to show you that like a phrase like Horn Surrounding Me and the way that you utilized it in that song can be, for me, become personal, you know what I mean? And
that's so cool.
Say something about how I experienced Los Angeles in the early days.
Oh, awesome.
I'm not going to ask you what that song is about because I'm not going to...
I think you got it.
Really?
about that. Yeah, it's about being overwhelmed. I feel like most of my songs are about that, but no, but you know what's funny is it started as I was playing, um, try not to be too long-winded, I'll make this fast.
It's okay.
That song didn't used to be horns surrounding me. I was using like another text.
Oh.
And this to me is a writing technique also, but it's hard because so like I used another text and just had the musical part of horns surrounding me, what became horns surrounding me, and then I wrote new lyrics.
Ah.
The text was like a weird translation of a Pushkin poem. Weirdly, is like called In Gardens Mutinous or something, or not In Gardens Mutinous, but in anyway.
Which is that's not a title
I'm always
of another
playing
song.
with words, you know. It's like
yeah. You say
So
in gardens. No.
which is the song on Aviary, but it's not the same.
Okay.
It's not exactly In Gardens Mutinous, but it's anyway. It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that it doesn't matter. Like, it's like it was a way for me to have lyrics for a song with before I knew what the lyrics were, and then I like found what I was feeling and made the lyrics for Horns Surrounding Me.
God, I'm learning so much today. Someone just was like, "That's a song on Aviary, Nite Jewelia." Like, I didn't know. Like, they should be interviewing you.
Lots of
sorry. I do know a lot about Julia's
names
catalog.
for my favorite.
I do know a lot about Julia's catalog. Okay.
Oh my God, Ramona knows so much.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna stop in a second because we're actually over. We're 8 minutes over 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I don't want to take up your entire evening. I know you have stuff to do, people to see. But I like this last question because it's kind of like talking about someone's own songwriting process. From Lim MZMDR on Instagram, it says, sometimes I will start writing without any clue of what it is that I'm trying to express, which leads to pages of dribble. And if I get lucky, then the ambition of the song reveals itself in the process. And at other times, I'm aware of what I want to achieve, but just a sentence or two is more than enough to encapsulate the essence of the idea of thought I'm trying to express, restricting me from elaborating and forming verses, and so on. For instance, the song Goddess Eyes, you know, I can see you, but my eyes are not allowed to cry, which is one of my favorite songs of yours. That feels like the essence of the entire song, at least to me, says the person who's writing. How do you proceed after that, writing-wise, in order to make it fit into a verse-chorus format of a 6-minute song? Sorry for the long-ass question. Big fan from India. I just think it's such an interesting question.
Right. Well, it's funny because this person starts by talking about their process, which is kind of like what I say a lot of times. It's like you try a bunch of things and anyway, I kind of already talked about that, but I think it's so cool that they said that.
But then when you create the line, I can see you, but my eyes are not allowed to cry, how did you know that was just going to be pretty much the only lyric of the song? What does your intuition tell you to that's enough?
I think it's like, it's true that you'll get these like these little phrases that will go in with the music, and they emerge with the music the moment, like I'm sitting at a piano writing or something, or synthesizer, in the case of Goddess Eyes, microchord. Well, okay, so I didn't write, so that I can see when my eyes are not allowed to cry is from one of the translations of Hippolytus. So it's not my own lyrics. But I liked that phrase so much. And so I just started playing it on my microchord, and it just happened, and you get into a trance and you're like, oh, that's the thing. And then and that's kind of like how usually, like a lot of times how lyrics work for me at first, and I agree that that will be sometimes the seed and the main thing, and then how you build from that, it just depends on the song for me. Like I said, I think you picked really good songs because today to play, because they're both examples of like times where I've really battled with like, how do I deal with the form of this song? Um, well, especially with, actually more so with Marienbad, but I think, but also with Le Jeu to You, and where you're trying to figure out like, and with Goddess Eyes, like that just seemed really, it seemed very clear that it should just be, well, no, that's not true. Because I made a whole other version that's like totally different form. Goddess Eyes 2.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. On Ecstasy. So actually I decided to go two different ways with that. So Goddess Eyes 1 is very simple, and it's just like kind of a loop over and over again, which I kind of like that. I love doing loops like that, I guess, like hypnotic kind of thing. But then
Goddess Eyes 2.
Goddess Eyes 2 is an example of like another approach, which is like expand it and try to add stuff to it.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Like, that's something that if you guys are curious about the two ways that a song can go, that's a great example. Just listen to those two tracks after this conversation ends. Yeah, I mean, Julia, there's so much to...
It's also technically a different Goddess Eyes 1 made on Audacity.
Oh.
Goddess Eyes 2 post Audacity when Ramona showed me Logic Pro.
The technology informs the songwriting process, something that we've been hinting at the whole time.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like, it's true, you know, like making a song in Audacity on 8-track or in a studio or on Pro Tools. All of our tools affect the way in which we create, and sometimes we have to use those tools wisely to get back to that original place of writing.
Right.
Which is why Julia and I think that we're similar in the fact that we rarely update our instrumental studio setups, because we're just like, yo, I trust this like really basic keyboard that I got at Guitar Center. Like, I just trust it. I'm not trying to like go do something crazy. We're not gearheads by any stretch of the imagination. And you know, keeping your sort of setup relatively constrained in order to allow that like feeling and sincerity, or whatever it's called, soul, personhood to come through. I'm just looking at the chat. Someone said, "What the hell? You made that on Audacity? That's too powerful." Yeah, she's really cool. Okay, so I'm going to end this chat here because we've talked for a long time, and I know we could talk more because, you know, whatever. We could talk about our ideas. We could talk about the Adriana Cavarero book. We'll do that next.
Oh, yeah.
What we'll do is we'll talk about that book in Spanish. That'll be our next challenge.
Great. That will not be hard for me at all.
Yeah, Julia and I are reading a philosophy text, Adriana Cavarero, More Than One Voice, and we're reading all about the origins of the voice and vocalizations versus language. So I don't know how to make this available for later viewing. Do you guys know? Yes, shout out to Occidental College for sponsoring this. Thank you so much for making this possible. You're welcome. Thank you guys. Aw,
yeah,
everybody's
it was
saying
really
thanks.
fun.
Yeah.
I could talk to Ramona about songwriting forever. Like,
I know.
We could talk about Good Evening.
I just want to talk about your songs.
1 Second of Love and your new music.
Oh my God, the new music too. Yeah, I'm finishing this record. And I just want to let you guys know I have one more of these talks. It's happening on Monday, April 27th. That's this coming Monday. And it's with Cole MGN, who produced and engineered with Julia these records of hers. He's worked with me on Good Evening, on 1 Second of Love. He's worked with all sorts of people, Beck, Christine and the Queens, et cetera, et cetera. And he's coming in to talk with me on Monday, and he is going to be listening to some of my students' songs and critiquing them live. It's going to be really cool. And my students are so talented. And Cole is an incredible studio whiz and producer and songwriter. I mean, he's helped me so much in kind of carving out certain things about my vision. And I know that Julia has entrusted him with, you know, thinking about her music in the process. And so I really wouldn't miss getting an inside scoop into some of the more behind the scenes stuff that goes on with the production side. So tune in. It's going to be 5 p.m. PST on Monday. And you're welcome. And yeah, mixing questions, definitely. Cole is the guy to ask about that. Even though he says he hates mixing, but he's really good at it.
Yeah, he says that. But
he's like really good at it, but he like hates it. Anyways, hopefully Twitch archives this, and you can watch it again if you guys want. I'm thinking that it will, because I've seen this of apparently you have to set it to save your VODs on your own. I don't know what to tell you, you guys. I'm not gonna. I'm bad about this. I tried my best. But yeah, tune in on Monday. And we'll see you later. Thank you so much, Julia, for talking to me. You're the best.
And everyone for listening and caring. Good luck with being creative right now. I know it's a weird time.
But just know that Julia and I are also, you know, we're just as confused as you are, and we are, you know, just all you can do is just sit down and put your hands on the keyboard and start babbling, you know? Just start babbling is our advice.
Don't try to be brilliant right now.
No.
I don't know if I feel this. Don't try to be like super brilliant. Just do whatever you like, make sounds you want to make and hear.
Yeah. I agree. That's a really good piece of advice. Okay, we love you guys. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.